Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
In 1956, an extraordinary man called Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, who was himself born of the untouchable communities, which is, as you probably know, the lowest of the low in terms of the caste system in India. And he became the first law minister of India, which was an extraordinary achievement for someone, from that low caste to work his way through. And in 1947, he was, when independence was declared, he became the first law minister of India, and in fact wrote the constitution. Now, the relevance of this man to the new Buddhists of India is that, being an untouchable, he came up to the caste system, and he was racking his brains for years for ways of liberating his fellow untouchables. And at the end of the study, the reflection, and the fantastic political efforts that he made, he decided that the only way forward for these oppressed communities was actually to move outside of the caste system completely. And that meant moving outside of Hinduism, which was a radical step, almost unthinkable, because I'm sure the implications are obvious too. So, in 1956, he and thousands, we're talking thousands of people, converted from Hinduism and took the 3 refuges and became Buddhists in Nagpur, overnight. So you had this movement, that was just the beginning, because then subsequently, as the word got around and that this great man, Ambedkar, had made this move, so untouchables from all over India decided they too would like to become Buddhists. So you got this tremendous cultural sweep of thousands, and India's got 1 billion people living there now. So it's got this vast population. So even if we're talking, and I think we are about 20% of the population of that billion is from the untouchable communities. Not all have become Buddhists, but we're talking vast thousands of people. 6 weeks, this is terribly dramatic, 6 weeks after the conversion, Ambedkar died. It was extraordinary. Just the effort of getting to that point was too much for him, and his health was deteriorating anyway. And at a relatively early age, he was in his 60s, he died. Which meant that you had all these former Hindus, now Buddhists, wanting to know about the Dharma, but having no means of doing so. Because Ambedkar died before he could set up effective teaching mechanisms. Although he did manage to write, before he died, the sort of standard work for most Indian Buddhists, which is the Buddha and his Dharma, which is a kind of an overview. It's like he wanted to write a Buddhist Bible sort of thing, a sort of overview of the whole thing, where people could get in one volume, some sense of what the Dharma was about. So, he died. The founder of the order that I'm involved in, the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order, which also, as Jim says, runs this centre, was in India at the time. He's an Englishman who was living in India as a monk, and he was an associate. You couldn't call him a friend. He was an associate of Ambedkar. They knew each other and they respected each other, as scholars mainly. So Sangharakshita happened to be there, that's the man's name, and there was incredible grief. You can see even now from the Indian things we read in the papers about the Indian psyche, it's incredibly volatile. There's all these demonstrations and mass murders, and there's an incredibly volatile kind of psyche there. And of course, when someone of Ambedkar's stature dies, the untouchables took it intensely personally. So they were devastated. They were absolutely, grief-stricken in their thousands. And Sangharakshita being there spent, I haven't got the figures straight in my head, but something like 35 talks he gave in 2 days, just to try and steady the ship. He happened to be in Nagpur, you see. at the time of this death. Ambedkar died in Bombay, Sangharajka was in Nagpur, so immediately he just went out and started to reassure the people that although Ambedkar had died, the Dharma is not dead, and that the work that Ambedkar had set up needs to be fulfilled. So the best way now people can respond to the death of Dr. Ambedkar is to start practicing the Dharma, because that's what he wanted, and to really liberate themselves from the mindset of being an untouchable, and taste the liberation that the Dharma offers, which is why Ambedkar had decided, having studied all the major religions of the world, why he decided to opt for Buddhism, because it had this taste of liberation, freedom. If I knew offhand, it would be very good to tell you. But there were 4 criteria, one of which, that he set when he was looking for the way out of Hinduism. The 4 criteria, one of which was that, unlike Christianity, in his view at least, it didn't deify or set up as sort of revere poverty. And he thought that was a very important aspect of the Dharma, that we're not, there's no virtue in being poor, basically. Okay. There were other aspects too, but I actually can't bring them to mind, so I won't tell you about them. Okay. So, where all this fits in with me and what I'm doing in India, and the video I want to show you, is that Sangharajka eventually came back to England on the advice and suggestion of his teachers to set up Dharma activities in UK and further afield. So he did. He came back in 1963, set up this Western Buddhist order, and slowly started to build an order of committed people that just wanted to practice and teach Dharma. And I joined that order in 1980, and so on. Now, in 1979, what happened was the order was sufficiently established, healthy, for some now relatively senior order members to go out to India. They were Westerners who had been trained by Sangharajka, they had studied the Dharma for about 15 years, and they were ready to take on teaching responsibilities. So the senior order members, 2 or 3 of them, only 3 in fact, went back to India in 1979 and started to teach the Dharma in India, and had a tremendous response. Because we're talking again, thousands of people desperate to hear the Dharma, with very little facilities. So these 3 Westerners went back, started activities, meditation classes, running retreats, things like this, and very quickly, a flourishing, you can't call it Western Buddhist order, but offshoot of the Western Buddhist order started in India. And there are now several hundred Indian order members. It's not called Western Buddhist order because that'd be crazy to call that in India. It's called the Trilokya Buddha Mahasangha, which I can't translate, it's just too complicated. Triple World Sangha, Mahasangha, Great Sangha of the Triple World. We could go into that, but it would get very dogmatic, not theoretical. Okay, I'm racing through this because I know we've got to finish by 12. Is it okay? The pace is not too fast, is it? Are you with this? Also, I get rather animated because I've been, So that's the story so far, and fine. And to support all this, what happened was these 3 guys went out there, started with these Dharma activities. It became very obvious too that wasn't going to be enough. There was a whole social aspect that had also to be accommodated, because there was incredible poverty and ill health. So social activities were also started. So a doctor who happened to be in the Western Buddhist order went out and started a medical centre and started to train people. And then there were lots of kids that couldn't get an education, so we started hostels for kids. So all these kind of social work type things were started. Now, to fund that, a charity was set up in London, in England, to raise money, and was very successful at raising money by knocking on people's doors and asking them to become donors. We have different laws in England, and you can go around and people sign up and they give money each month, and it's a very successful way of raising money. So lots of money was raised relatively quickly and easily. Consistent money, that is, because people sign up for 5 years or something, so that you can start budgeting, you know how much is coming in. So this money was made available for these activities, both Dharma activities and social activities in India, and so the work really did catch fire, because now there were resources available, buildings were being built, meditation halls were being built, hostels were being built for kids, medical institutions, and things like sewing classes for women, so they could start earning their own keep and making their own clothes and selling clothes. Things like this, sort of small-scale cottage industries, so livelihood could start. One of the Noble Eightfold Path limbs. So now, this is where I come into the story. So in 1991, I was working at the London Buddhist Centre, teaching Dharma and other things there. I was working there full time, and it was time for me to take a sabbatical. I was getting jaded. So one of the senior order members suggested, "Why don't you just take 6 months off? Just give yourself a break." I said, "Okay." And I wanted to come to America because I'd seen all the movies, and I'd never been. So I said, "I'm going to go to America, in my 6 months off." And that was fine. And then this other pal of mine said, "Good, great, you'd have a great time, you'll really have a great time. But why don't you go to India?" Now, this wasn't in my movie. I was going to see Brooklyn Bridge, I was going to see the Golden Gate, I was going to see... And suddenly I was going to go to Bombay. No. Bombay doesn't have the same ring, Thank you very much. But he made a good point. He said, you could go there, you could have a good effect, you could have a great time. And I suddenly thought, well, India, yeah, why not? Why not go to India? It's like kind of magic. I never think of it. Yeah, okay. So I said, okay, I'll go to India for half my 6 months. And I knew I wanted to take a long-ish solitary retreat, just to go away and meditate and use the time well. So the other 3 months, or 2.5 to be exact, I used for that purpose. So I went to India. Now, behind this, my background before I got very involved with the Dharma was I was a theatre director in England. And, I'd done a lot of work, was quite experienced. And because I was going to India, the Indian order members, not the Westerners now, but some of the Indian ones who had now become fairly senior, they'd been going since 79 and we're talking 91. So you've got some Indian order members that have been practicing serious Dharma for 15 years or more. More than that, isn't it? 79 to 91, that's like 20 odd years, isn't it? How many years is that? 12 years? Yeah, 12. Thank you. I'm not too good on the maths. Some all right. Maths is a bit difficult. Anyway. So some of these Indian Dharmachari order members said, given your background, could you not possibly do something cultural when you come out? Because they were fully aware that, okay, we've got the social projects, we've got the Dharma, but any real kind of move of a community which is finding itself again has got to have its own cultural element going. It's got to have its own culture. Every civilization, every culture, every society has to have its own culture. And any new Buddhist society must have its own new Buddhist culture. Because the culture available in India, even today, is very strongly, overtly Hindu. It has to be, because it's thousands of years of tradition. So, for example, I was in India in February. You go and see a classical concert of Kathak dancing, and they have the bells and the smarbles. But what they're dancing is stories from the Mahabharata or Bhagavad Gita. Hindu text. This is the culture. So it's terribly overtly religious. And because it's religious, it's Hindu, which is the dominant religion. And the Bharatanatyam dance, that you see, they just tell stories of Krishna and all the rest of it. See? So it's terribly difficult to have access to these wonderful ancient cultural forms and yet have your Buddhist kind of terms of reference. Because you're not going to go in there and really get off on Krishna if you actually really have a stronger feeling for the Buddha. So I said, well, okay, I'll come out. I mean, what do I know about Indian culture, though? It's a bit of a thing, isn't it, to go out there and to start to, I thought, wow, this could be difficult. And tread carefully, because I don't have by no means have a comprehensive knowledge of Indian culture. I mean, I've read 1 or 2 books, and that's about it. So I went out there rather gingerly, willing, but slightly confused as to what to do. And better keep this brief. It's a good story, but it would take too long. So I didn't know what to do, but they'd set up 6 people for me to work with that could have some influence themselves when I'd gone. I was only going for 3 months, so they could then carry on when I left. So, by some sheer fluke, luck, the night before I was supposed to start work, one of the Indian order members came to me and said he'd like help to make some plays out of 3 stories he's got in his head. I said, fine, come in. We had a chat one evening. So he told me these 3 stories, and then, well, what can I do in an hour to take stories into plays? I mean, it's a huge jump, where do you begin to tell us? I did my best, and I encouraged him. But after he'd gone, I thought, wait a minute, he doesn't need to make plays out of them, because the stories he told me were fine. They were really interesting. He could just tell the stories. And forget about making plays out of them. And I thought, that's what I'll do with the group. It's like a gift. I won't try and do anything. I'll get them to tell stories. They know about the culture. They can tell me the stories. And it was, it's a very riveting form of entertainment to sit down and be told a story. So anyway, we did this. And this is where the project kind of started. Because we did it with these 6 people. We went out to a village one night after we'd been working for maybe 4 or 5 weeks. And out to this village outside Pune, up in the Ghats. Typical India, they said, it's all arranged, no worries, you just go there, everything's set up, we get there, no one knows a thing about it. Never heard of it. Well, okay. But again, typical India, but okay, you're here, let's do it, fine. We're not doing anything else. People sitting around in this village. And so there was one guy who was fixing up a halogen light for next day's, there's going to be a political meeting in the village. So this guy was up there, so he said, would you mind just shining your light over here for about half an hour to an hour? He said, that's fine. India's, everything's fine, it's okay, there's no rush. So he put his light down, we banged a drum, people came out of their houses, sat on durries on the dust, and we just did this little performance in this village, on the dust, and just the middle of the village. And it was, for me, a total education to see people communicating something. They were telling stories that really concerned them about their villages, about drinking problems in their communities, untouchable communities, about dowry weddings, things that were very strong in their hearts, and the sort of tragedies surrounding these issues that go on every day. And these completely unskilled performers were giving riveting performances. And the audience were like entranced. And I thought, well, what's going on? It was like the rudiments, the essentials of theatre being played out. And it made me think a lot about, wait a minute, this is very interesting. I'm learning an enormous amount about what is the nature of theatre here, let alone ways of spreading the Dharma. So at that point I'm going to stop. We need to swivel our hips slightly, and I'll show you a 15-minute video about the project that I started.
एक बनो नेक बनो एक बनो नेक बनो वक्त ने पुकारा है हालात ने ललकारा है वक्त ने पुकारा है हालात ने ललकारा है एक बनो नेक बनो ला 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 village in western Maharashtra to work with one of our Ashtra teams there. There are 11 teams now in different parts of Maharashtra. These teams are formed from the ex-untouchable communities. The Ashtra work aims to revitalise their culture by re-establishing the arts of storytelling, drama making and songwriting. Untouchables are the new Buddhists of India. They have left Hinduism, their traditional religion, to escape from the stigma and pain of caste. My job is to train the leaders of these teams so that they can teach and develop their own teams.
सदैव आम्ही गातच राहू सदैव आम्ही गातच राहू मैत्रीचे गाणे आमुचे गाणे आमचे गाणे एकच गाणे मैत्रीचे गाणे आमचे गाणे.
We have separate teams of men and women. Women can go to a village and address women on issues concerning women. This play is about fertility. It goes on to show how it's not always the woman's fault if a child is not produced in a marriage. The common assumption is that the woman is at fault if there are no children. The men's teams pick on key issues in people's lives also. The team leaders, like their women counterparts, attend special residential training retreats and create their own work there. They then go back to their towns and cities and pass on what they have learned to their local Ashwagosha teams. This team in Bopati, near Pune, are dramatising the dangers of having blind faith in the local witch doctor or holding on to superstitious beliefs. When we make stories or dramas or songs for that matter, we concentrate on making clear images and communicating them effectively. The old tradition depends on clear images much more than on language. When we hear a story, it's the images we remember rather than the words used.
Now, in that picture, do they establish how much the dowry is? Is it a question of dowry?
No, that time she only see that girl.
Have you got the pictures written down? Yes? Where are they?
But yeah, this picture is cancelled, but now I was doing this.
Ah. See, I knew there was something wrong. There's something that looked like unnecessary. It's a long time. The drama wasn't moving forward.
Yeah.
The stories, plays and songs we create address important issues in the lives of the ex-untouchable community. This play shows how dowry causes great pain and difficulties in modern Indian marriages. This dowry drama had a happy outcome when the families decided to do away with the payment, which was much more in accord with their new Buddhist principles.
Now I feeling very confident. I can do any localities. I can do there any Ashogos program without any tension. So my confidence and my quality is developed.
Jayamati taught us so many things, how to develop story and how to make a drama and from action, how can we imagine and how can I prepare story and drama.
From childhood, I like the cultural program, like singing. It is my hobby, and he helps us to develop our qualities. I can express my emotions in my acting or my singing.
Jayamati is not only my leader, not only my friends, and he is very good actors, and he encouraged to me, and I like.
The songwriting we do is a very important part of the work. The audiences in the villages and in the urban slum localities really love listening to songs, especially new ones that deal with issues close to their hearts and lives. This song is about hanging on to the belief in the old Hindu gods.
So I enjoy working with Jayamati. Many items also in Ashwaghosh, in warm-up, in lying down, in massage, and storytelling, singing song, dance, is so many things. People like new songs in some Jai Bhim, Jai Bhim, Pukare Ja, then Sai Maya, in new songs. So that song is very popular in Ashwaghosh work in Aurangabad. Small boys to big man also saying that singing song, some dramas, acting. So in the localities, very, very powerful and very, very inspiring that localities. And they like very much Ashwaghosh work.
This is one of the 20 hostels set up and run by the Karanar Trust and its sister organisation in India, Bahajanutai, which means for the welfare of the many. In these hostels, girls and boys who come from the very poorest sections of Indian society can live and get an education. They come from remote villages and urban areas where it's not possible to attend school regularly. By living in the hostel, they can carry on with their studies and get the qualifications that can be an escape from poverty and degradation. Ashwagosha teams in each area work with the children in these hostels. Our aim is to give them an opportunity to express themselves creatively and to develop their own individual imaginations and emotional lives. Many of the boys and girls in the Latur and Omragar hostels come from this area. It was here in September 93 that a terrible earthquake killed 30,000 people and rendered thousands of others homeless and destitute. Many children were orphaned, and the hostels provide an opportunity for these children to rebuild their lives and have a warm and loving environment in which to live. It is particularly important to encourage the young girls to express themselves, to find their own unique voices. As in Indian society, girls are often overlooked when it comes to education and developing their own individuality.
Up, Malachi, and then at this time, as we breathe in, become like a Malachi.
तुम्ही ज्यावेळेस श्वास घ्याल तुम्ही अशी कल्पना करा की तुम्ही एक महाकाय अशी व्यक्ती झालेला आहात.
When you breathe out, become small. When you breathe out, become a small person.
आणि ज्यावेळेस तुम्ही श्वास आत घ्याल त्यावेळेस चिमुकले एवढूशे व्हाल. चिमुकली. अतिशय चिमुकले.
Then just shake heads. Very nice to meet you and see you sometime in the future.
तुम्हाला भेटून खूप खूप आनंद झालाय. पुन्हा भविष्यात तुमची भेट घडो हीच सरी.
Working with Jayamati and his help to Ashwagosh, very, very useful, because before I have no self-confidence, very fearful. So working with him, lots of self-confidence, friendliness. I can make so many friends, and openness also working with. I can communicate with him very freely, my emotions. So feel very free to work with him. His very best way to work with people, with me. He said, just he allowing to what qualities. We get out so many things. Creativity, creative expression, and confidence, self-confidence, happiness, joy, and how can I express? I feel emotional, our emotional world, more and more expressive.
So we have a few minutes, and I think the best way of spending that few minutes is to open it up for any questions. So I'd be very happy to take questions. Clint.
I'm just curious whether you've experienced kind of a backlash from the entrenched Hindu
from the Hindu society.
Yeah.
Well, you have to be very careful, because as even today you read the papers, there's still very strong caste prejudice at work. Like people are getting killed for using the well still in certain parts of India. So we have to be very careful. When we go to a village, like you saw there, the opening sequence, they were entering a village and talking about the program that was going to take place, and the last sequence, they were leaving the village. We generally get invited to perform by other ex-untouchable, that means new Buddhists. So we go to that part of the village, because it's still very segregated. So we would perform there. But we do circle the whole village and do our publicity, which is basically going around singing a song, like they did there. And the material, well, again, you have to be very sensitive. So it's quite risky. That song about, to the Buddhists about move your faith from the old Hindu gods towards the Buddha. you have to be very sensitive. You can't say anything derogatory about the Hindu gods. But you just talk about, in Buddhism we have our own forms of devotion and things like that. So great sensitivity is required, especially, when we started. Because it would be great to go and make defiant gestures, but then these people have got to live there afterwards, and the repercussions could be enormous. So given the volatile nature of Indian temperament, we always go very, very careful. And also, we don't want to antagonise people. That's not our work. We want to just go and spread the Dharma. So, and the Dharma's open to everyone. So we invite everyone to come to the program, but we are sensitive where we perform and how we couch our things. It's a good question. We have to be very sensitive to that area. Sir?
In the first part of your talk, you gave the impression, to me, which may have been a mistaken one, that the formation of the Western Buddhist order by Sangharakshita was strongly influenced by his experience with the untouchables of Edgar. Is that actually the case, or was it something else?
I don't think it would be accurate to say that the movement that he formed in the West was strongly influenced by the Ambedkar phenomena. But certainly I think it's correct to say that the movement that he began back in India was very much influenced by the Ambedkar thing. In the West, no, because it's not the same, the issues aren't the same for us in the West, because there isn't the same kind of poverty, as you know, and the same kind of degradation. So, no, I wouldn't think it's the same. Just as a rider to that point, though, which is I found this interesting to reflect on. In his view, at least, Sangharakshita's view, the pain in the West, and he's a man that spent 20-odd years in India, and much longer in the West too, so he's experienced in both. But what he said was, in his view, the pain in the West is far greater than the pain experienced that we saw. He says, in the West, the pain is psychological. The loneliness, the isolation, the alienation, the pain of great psychological suffering is so intense in the West. He says, comparatively, because I studied with him on this issue in 1986, and my big thing was, well, it's easy for Ambedkar. It was so obvious what he had to do. It's all this degradation, all this poverty. Like you get fired up about that kind of stuff. And he says, no, that's a michaditi. He says the pain that surrounds you in the West today is far greater. But it's people suffer. So, as a corollary to your point, you could say there's a knock-on back in the West. You take the same issue and intensify it because it's worse in the West.
I think actually, Mother Teresa said the same thing about
really
in the West the pain is psychological and it's worse than in India where it's obviously at the physical level
that's correct.
To heal it, but in the West it's not visible.
That's right. It's more subtle in a sense. Yeah. Oh, well, it's interesting to hear Mother Teresa does the same. Yes, sir.
I had a question. It seems like storytelling is pretty embedded in the culture, and I was just wondering about was there any way that they were storytelling about what was happening with them anyway?
Well, not in an organised way, but you're right. In as much as since I've been working a lot on storytelling now the last few years, since we decided on this approach, I've got very interested in the whole phenomenon. And I think your point's correct in the sense that we all tell stories every day. And we listen to stories every day. So, I bet we've heard one today already. I had a terrible time last night. What happened? Well, I came back from this blah, 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 and I met this, I was scared. He's a big guy. There's a story starting. There's a narrative, there's a series of images unfolding. We do it all the time. Because we have to have stories. We experience ourselves in relation to others, straight down the line, Dharma this, and how we experience ourselves, is we narrate it. We understand not only our own psyche, this is, but also our own culture through replaying back to ourselves images. So the caveman will draw a picture of the sun and the moon on his cave wall and make a story of that So you get some sense of himself in relation to where he is on the planet. You get the point I'm making, is that this self-other thing needs to be played out through the narrative, through the story.
So there wasn't anything organised in terms of...
There wasn't things organised like that. No, because that's where it comes in. And I just happened by fluke to hit on this reservoir of... And the other point to make, with relation to stories, which is why I've got so interested in it, is that in terms of liberating creativity or potential in sentient beings, which is what we're about as Dharma practitioners, everybody can and does tell stories. You haven't got to have any specialisation, any particular great gifts. You just feel what you want to say and you say it. So it means that everybody's got access to this discipline, and that gives me great room for manoeuvre. So the first cop-out is, I don't act, I can't perform. You say, great, that's absolutely fine, you're quite right. So what we're going to do is not worry about that, we're just going to start telling a few stories to each other. Before long, in a small group of 6, this guy's told a story, and people say, wow, that's lovely, that's amazing. Suddenly you think, I've got a voice. So you say, why don't we just try that outside, in the village? You see how it builds up. And then what they do, as you saw in the video, is then very easily the story will translate into drama. Yeah? As in fact does culture. Civilizations start with rudimentary images, the hieroglyphic on the wall. Over time that gets sophisticated. That becomes the story I tell in the market square. That becomes the play I write later on in terms of civilization, isn't it? So you can see in terms of the genesis of a culture how, we're at the starting point there, and that's lovely. So in terms of creating a new Buddhist culture, by sheer fluke we hit on a terrifically potent starting point. And over the years, the movies will come out of that. Why not? Yeah? Over the years, I hope that we will, break this barrier between great traditional Indian culture, which is so rich, the music, the food, the dance, thousands of years of wonderful tradition to draw on, the Bharatanatyam, and it's wonderful stuff. All that we can get access to when we learn the skills of Bharatanatyam, Kathak, and create our own traditional Indian Buddhist dance forms, which would be magnificent. But at the moment, they're a little bit, that's for the Brahmins. We don't go near that. So what I do when I go there, I make sure there's a bit of cash around, and we go off and see quite a few of us will go and see this stuff and enjoy it. And then we start talking, we could do the same thing, but we could tell a Buddhist story. In fact, I've got another video which we won't show today, but next time I come to San Francisco, I'll ask Jim if I can show you. It's an 18-minute video of something we did in 97, which was, that was 95 what you saw. So we carried on, and I thought, we're good. These people are good. They're telling great stories, and all they need is more confidence. So I had decided, I said, I just want to show them how good they are. So I said to them, the leaders of these different teams, why don't we go into Bombay, hire a big theatre, and put on your work? They said, basically, do me a favour. I said, no, I think you're good enough. It took a lot of things, because actually, most of them had never been inside a theatre, let alone perform in one. Yeah? So, I sold them the idea, basically, because I knew it was doing I knew they'd be good enough. I knew they were good enough. Because I worked in this theatre, I know what works, enough to know what I'll hold an audience for an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And I knew this stuff was good enough. So, what we did was, we collected our greatest hits, from all these different groups, and the leaders performed them, because I couldn't run around India, it'd be impractical. So the leaders of the different groups came together, only for about 2 weeks, in the retreat centre. We did a selection process, what are the most popular little plays you do in your area, blah, 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 and we made up a programme. Now also, you saw we write songs. We've got fantastic songs. We've got 33 songs they've written, And so they selected their songs, they selected their plays, and we did a show in this theatre in Bombay, and it went down a bomb. It was lovely. And there's an 18-minute video of that, which, is lovely to see. Okay, one last question. I think we have to stop for our tea. Yes, sir.
Two quick questions. Do you have an idea of how many Buddhists are in India now, apart from these new converts? And secondly, I thought I had read recently on the internet that the untouchable caste or class had been abolished by law,
That's right.
but they socially may not yet be integrated at all.
That's correct. Answer the second question first. That's why I try to refer to them as the ex-untouchables, because strictly speaking, they don't exist. Because it was outlawed fairly early on, in Ambedkar's time, I think 47, might have been 49.
49.
Outlaw untouchability, untouchability was outlawed. Yeah? So we can't speak about untouchables. Okay, but of course it still goes on, especially in the rural areas. I can't give you an accurate figure to the first part of your question. I would guess it's in the early millions, given that we've got 1 billion. It's a few million. But mainly in the Ambedkar belt, where he was a big influence, which is central India. So we go from Bombay, which is mid to South India, and we go across, which is the state of Maharashtra, where he comes from. Yeah? And it loops around and stops just short of Nagpur. Now, caste system is so complex, but because he was a Maha, because you get all these subcastes, you see, you get thousands of castes. So, look, I'm a shoemaker. There's no way I'm going to speak to a sweeper. Yet we're all untouchables. So we all have to find a bit of dignity at someone else's expense. Yeah? So you get these incredible gradations, yeah? And closed off. No way are they going to, they pollute. Me, an untouchable, I get polluted by this guy because he's even lower. It's crazy. So why I'm saying this is that the limitation, there's only a few million Buddhists, is because there's a whole casting going on. And Ambedkar was from the Maha caste. So someone else from a slightly higher caste says, no way, man, I'm not going to get involved with those low schmucks. Those Buddhists, they're all, so you got all that to work with. So Westerners can break that, because, we're not caste. So they wheel us out, we go there, I go there. And you go to a village, and you're phenomenal, because you're white, I'm 6'3", which is, they're all titchy in India. I'm enormous. And so you become a great focus, and that's very useful, because you cut across, suddenly the Hindus will come. What's all this? The Western are coming. Hey, these guys are well connected. It helps. We must stop because of June.
Thank you, Jayamati. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.